You know those moments when you know what you should do, but even when you know better, you still don't do it? It is one of the reasons I created the momentum formula to help people when they find themselves stuck and not doing the thing that's in their best interest. And if you've heard me talk about the formula, you've likely heard me talk about accountability. It's a helpful tool for so many people who are far more likely to follow through on something when there's external accountability. But what happens when accountability is the thing you're resisting? When it's the thing you know you should do because it works well for you, but you still don't do it? That's what we are exploring today. Why is this happening and what can you do about it? And if you are listening right now and you're actually not someone who needs external accountability, you decide to do something and you follow through, then this episode still might help you as a way to support other people around you who do work well with it and who might need it in order to follow through more effectively. Now, I speak from firsthand experience here. I have been very open about how I will struggle with follow through when there's no real deadline or what I call true accountability. If I set my own schedule and my own deadlines, I know there's a really good chance that when the time comes, I'm going to do something else. I'll put it off. And this lack of external accountability in my brain is like a lack of urgency. And my brain tends to respond better to urgency when there's a real deadline. So let's look at the reasons this might be happening. And spoiler, a lot of this is mindset, but there are some other reasons that could get in the way. So before we get into the mindset stuff, let's look at a couple of the other causes. Now, first, I always like to look at the idea of, is this a logical roadblock? There's just something in between, whether that's information, skills, etc. When you are looking for external accountability to help you to follow through on something that matters to you, sometimes there are a lot of options or a lot of things to consider. And that can actually feel very overwhelming when we just have so many options to choose from and you're not really sure which one's the right one. And if there's a time commitment involved, like showing up at a certain time, maybe there's a schedule that you have to consider. What is the cost if there is a cost? Not all accountability has a cost, but some does. Is there travel involved? Are you actually going somewhere in person for this accountability and meeting up with someone? And also, is it the right kind of structure to actually help me to follow through? Sometimes accountability is incredibly specific. I think a really good example is hiring a personal trainer to help you follow through at the gym with a specific plan. And when I was in my 20s, I joined a new gym in town and I decided to invest in a personal trainer. It took some planning to make sure that it fit my schedule and my budget. But once it did, it was the most consistent I had ever been with working out and getting progressively stronger. I had real results. Now, sometimes accountability is more general, where you are working on something on your own, but you want to have support on that follow through. For example, every Monday, I meet with a group of other entrepreneurs and content creators, and we help keep each other accountable week to week, even though we're all working on completely different projects. Now, the second potential roadblock could be the biological one around, is this the right fit for me? Just because there is this form of accountability does not mean it's actually going to suit you or that you're going to want to stick with it. And there are so many questions to consider with your preferences, like, is it one-to-one support or is this maybe in a group? Is it online? Is it in person? Is it scheduled check-ins or meetups? Or is this done asynchronously, back and forth? If you are working with someone else, also, do you feel comfortable? Do you feel respected? And actually, when I moved to a new town in my early 30s, I wanted to create that consistency that I had with my old personal trainer, who obviously was not in the same town as me. So I actually tried out a new trainer at the gym I had signed up with. She was really nice and very competent. She knew what she was doing. But as the weeks went on, I started to get the feeling she didn't really like her job. Like, when we were together, she had to be there. I could sense it, and it was like she was counting down the minutes until the session was done. And regardless of what was actually happening in her head, to me, it felt like she resented being there, and I did not want to be on the receiving end of that. And that did not last. It didn't work out. I stopped personal training, and honestly, that experience impacted my willingness to go through it again. Which leads me to the next kind of roadblock, which is psychological. And this is when we hesitate and we stay stuck because of fears. In some cases, the fears are obvious. Like if you had a negative experience in the past and you don't want to repeat that, you don't want to waste your time, that can be really frustrating and worrisome. If I'm investing time and maybe money in this or maybe traveling, I could feel reluctant to want to repeat that and have it not work out again. But there are a lot of cases where the fears are hidden below the surface. And when it comes to accountability, I've noticed, at least for me, there's this pattern of inner dialogue that I will notice resurface again and again and again. So I'm hearing things these inner sort of patterns and sentences. For example, I will say things to myself like, I should be able to do this on my own. Or other people have no problem sticking to this, so why can't I? There are some times in my life where I do consistently follow through on things without needing accountability. So why isn't this working? And that's so frustrating. And at the heart of these statements, when you really unpack comments like, I should be able to, and other people can do it, and why does it work sometimes and not others? These are all connected to this assumption that needing accountability is a weakness, or maybe there's some sort of inferiority, that other people just are better at this. And when I start to unpack that, I get curious and ask those questions, I realize, hold on, if I were to ask myself if needing glasses makes a person weak or inferior, I would say, of course not. Their eyes are shaped differently, and a lens helps them see clearly. It's a tool you can use to help you. Our brains are also wired differently from each other, and sometimes brains that respond well to urgency and external expectations, they can use accountability as a kind of support. And also, I just happen to be someone who needs glasses for distance. And similar to my experience with accountability, sometimes I get by fine without glasses. I start to get frustrated though when I start to struggle and I'm not wearing them and things are challenging. And then when I actually just suck it up and I put on my glasses, I'm reminded of what a difference they make. I also maybe have been prone to repeating, like, wow, this is so much better with my glasses on, as if I'm learning over and over and over again. But wishing that I would always follow through on my own expectations, my internal deadlines, is sort of like wishing that my eyes were shaped differently. It's kind of a waste of energy. If I tried without it and it's not working, instead of just wishing I were different, then it's about embracing it. But what if you're actually fine with the idea of accountability? You embrace the idea, you have nothing against it, you don't think that it's any kind of weakness, which by the way, I know logically this is not a weakness, but sometimes it creeps in. This is where sometimes we can still hesitate. So we're all on board for accountability, but we're still hesitating. This is where I think the accountability is not the issue. It's you're not hesitating because of the accountability, but you're hesitating because what happens if you do take consistent action on your goal or your pursuit? In other words, you want to follow through and you're open to using accountability, but what if something bad happens when you do? For example, if I give it a real shot, what if I find out that I'm not good enough at this? Or what if I fail in front of other people and that I don't want that to happen? Or what if this works and I don't really like who I become when this happens? What if I find out I actually just made the wrong choice and I've spent all this time going down the wrong path and pursuing something that was a mistake? Or there are some cases where people might say, well, what if people around me, maybe my family, will start to resent how much time I am spending on this new pursuit or project? So you can see there are all sorts of different examples, and every single person is different, but it's not actually about resisting the accountability. You're resisting taking action just in case something bad happens. And this can happen with anything where we feel stuck. Okay, so I just went through the roadblocks, but what do you actually do? And my advice is always start logical with a method. So, what are my options for accountability? Sometimes we know some off the top of our head. If we go back to the idea of strength training, a really obvious one is a personal trainer, but another one might be join a class. It could be using an app. You could get an accountability buddy. There are all sorts of ways that you can build in accountability, and there are probably a bunch you could name off right away. But there are also probably some other options you don't know about. And actually, I think this is a really good example for using AI to help you research what are some options. Maybe you want in person options local in town, maybe you want online options, but you can research and just start to gather all the different opportunities you have and see if that's a good fit. Also, does it work within your schedule, your budget, and all of that? Then switch over to biological with your mode. So, what do you know about yourself in the past? What has worked before? And what do I prefer? When have I been really consistent before? And what kind of accountability was I using if I was using it? And also, what are the people that I wanted to be around? What were the environments that actually worked really well? And for things that didn't work, if you got burned, what did you learn? And what can you look for the next time so that it is a good fit? Then finally, after you've looked at those two, that's where I want you to get curious about these hesitations and your mindset. Why am I resisting? Am I resisting because I just wish that I could be more like other people? Am I resisting this because I don't want to admit that I need support for this? Or am I actually just worried about the thing itself? And in that case, what evidence is there that maybe contradicts my concerns or my worries? And are there other people who are doing this and they're not having the same negative outcomes that you are worried will happen? And of course, it's not always going to go perfectly. And if things do not go exactly as planned, am I still going to be okay? Do I have evidence behind me that says, yeah, you know what? You've overcome difficulties in the past and you'll figure this out? No matter the roadblock, the next step is taking action. And I know this is a part where we can kind of get stuck, especially if we have to make choices. We've got to make some decisions and we're worried about making the wrong one. This is where I really recommend giving yourself a time bound trial. I've talked about this before, but I want to mention it again. It's around giving yourself clear timelines to decide, to prepare, and then give it a try. You are not getting married to this idea. You are just testing it out. This is a trial. It's like dating. And I really like the 333 approach. And it's about testing one option for long enough to learn if it works well. For example, if it's a really simple choice, like I just need to pick an app to help me stay accountable. Maybe you're just doing kind of a daily checklist and you want to try it. Give yourself 3 minutes to just pick an app, 3 hours to learn how it works, and then try it for 3 days. It's really quick if this is a low stakes decision. If it's a slightly bigger one, maybe you give yourself 3 hours to do some research and make a decision, 3 days to prepare. Maybe that means signing up for something, finding a personal trainer. We'll just use that example. And then you give maybe 3 weeks to try. And then of course, if it's a bigger decision that has higher stakes and is a little bit harder to reverse, maybe you give yourself 3 days to do research, 3 weeks to prepare, and then 3 months to give it a try. Those are arbitrary deadlines, but my brain really likes the 333 of it all. Is this really tiny? 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days. Is it a little bit smaller? Then you can do is it 3 hours, 3 days, and 3 weeks, or 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months. To me, it's this way of saying, I'm going to give this a try. I am not committing to this for life. But this gives you enough information to know what worked and what didn't work so that you can factor that into maybe the next trial if this did not work for you. And it might not happen right away, finding the right fit. But when you do find the type of accountability that really works, it is a powerful tool to help you both find and keep your momentum.